it's such a night and day difference going from St. Clair County with being the fastest growing county in the state to what it feels like I stepped back 20 years in time. And I'm not saying that's it's all, it's not a bad thing. I don't want to say that it's a bad thing. So in my course of my career over St. Croix, I dealt with all the land development and the changes in the landscape. My background being environmental science and hydrogeology, never did I think I'd be in zoning and then into planning. But we look at how everything's connected as far as our land use, our groundwater, where we live. It all starts back at planning. And I'm very thankful to be with Dunn County and an amazing team, an amazing community to be here. And Diane and I are connected, very distant, but I grew up in Boyceville, so it is nice to what I call being back home. My grandparents lived on Tanner Lake, so it's pretty cool to be here.
We're happy to have you, Tammy. Okay.
Let's see.
Oh.
Well,
Is that the west side?
there we go.
Wrong county.
Wrong county. Yeah.
That was okay, County.
I'm jumping right into some stats, right? So not to, overkill or give too much background, but we started our comprehensive plan project just about a year ago now, and we did a survey that went out to the community. And honestly, it was probably the most disappointing response rate we had in all around. And I think maybe we're survey overload. Get one more link, one more thing in the mail to do. And when something says 20 minutes to complete a survey, you probably are like, I don't have 20 minutes to do it, so I'm not going to. But I thought that no matter what, there's kind of those themes that no matter what come out. So why do people live in Dunn County? And agriculture, natural beauty, near family and friends, and rural lifestyle. Would that kind of capture why most people live here?
Yep.
So, I'm just now jumping into levels of government, right? Who makes the decisions? Why county versus level, or the levels of government, right? County versus city, villages, town government. Really, I'm just going to jump down to cities and villages, right? We have the city of Menominee, our largest rural urban center, in the area. They have home rule authority. What happens in the city stays in the city in a sense, and the county is an overreaching services that we can provide them, but we don't tell what the city can do. Similar to what happens within the villages and towns. So just trying to kind of keep that in perspective as, overall the county is there for courts, public health, and those social services.
Tammy, if you're not in the city or a village, like you're just in a town.
Town, yep.
Town, which is the level of government that?
So towns cover an area. So we have our town government that are going to handle local infrastructure decisions. Where the roads go, how the roads are maintained in that town government. Town government, I think actually go to my next slide, maybe not.
Oh, it says at the bottom there, okay.
Yeah, so town government it can decide whether they want to be under zoning or not. So in Dunn County, we have 22 townships, 17 of them are under county zoning. And I should say like that, so our town government is really in those unincorporated areas. So cities and villages, the county doesn't have a say in. So this comprehensive plan project that I'm jumping into really is encompassing that town government level and overreaching bigger picture of how we all interact.
Okay.
So planning and why it matters. It's, the direction. If we don't have a direction, a plan to where we're gonna grow, what happens, what's that vision, what happens? So, I mean, if we go back to around early 2000s, the Wisconsin government said, hey, every community needs a plan. Why, and why would that be? I mean, we had land use, zoning since the 30s. So why in early 2000 would the state government tell us every community needs a plan?
But
Tax
growth
base.
is,
Growth?
with
Tax
the-
planning.
Tax planning? Cost of infrastructure, funding, so really a lot of it comes to even funding. The state, there's only so much money, and if a community doesn't have a plan, they're less likely to, the government's not gonna give you money. If you don't have a plan to where you wanna grow, where your infrastructure is, you're probably gonna get, cut off or, revisited. But sewer districts, that's another big thing, is if we would have had planning earlier on, would we have sewer districts around Tanner Lake, for example? Would we have had all these private wells and septics around that lake? So overall, just jumping into the land use portion of it, a comprehensive plan, and not into, all the details of what is required, but as we look at growth, and what do you think the growth projections look like for Dunn County? Are we gonna grow? Are we going to kind of stay the same?
Pretty flat.
Pretty flat, yep. And actually, in the next 20, 30 years, we're gonna show a decrease in population. So how does that change how we plan? If we're going to lose people, does that change what we decide? Where we put our money, our investments? What are those land use decisions that we're gonna try to, protect, implement? Economic development, right? So if we aren't bringing any more money in, or any more people, where does the money come? If no more infrastructure is built, how do we pay for the services that we have, that we need to have, that base? Housing, transportation, so really everything is, connected for those components. I just like this slide to talk about the home rule and zoning, and the bubbles that we live in. And if we continue to operate in bubbles, what's that gonna happen? So I do think City of Menominee and our adjacent towns have a really good thing where they call the gentleman's agreement for a boundary agreement, where they kind of agree to have growth happen, but it's not all connected yet, right? We know infrastructure should probably happen, sewer, water service in certain ways, but we're really not there. So Dunn County has a comprehensive plan, and if you want to read the most boring document and not be entertained, I'd encourage, pull out our plan now. It's lacks graphics, it's all text, and it's very, very difficult to follow. So that's why planning is, no one likes it, right? What is the purpose? So I really hope that through this planning effort going forward that we decide, I feel like we're in the process of coming up with a plan that actually is meaningful. You're gonna wanna look at it and make decisions, right? So, and really the plan is saying, what are our absolute no's? What don't we want to happen in certain places? Or what can we tolerate in certain areas? What are those absolute no land uses? And how do we put that framework in this plan that encourages or supports where infrastructure can or can't happen? I don't know if Scott recognizes his picture at all.
Never saw him before in my life.
Yeah. It's what I appreciate this planning effort is getting out to our towns and our communities and having that conversation. It's not staff sitting at the government center trying to decide what's gonna happen. It's getting out in the community, talking to our townships, our residents, and finding out what they want. What is the need of this community? Driving to work, right? If connection. where roads should happen, where those improvements should happen, how do we make sure people stay connected, where are our parks gonna be, what do we want to protect, how do we protect our groundwater? And then my favorite part, I probably would say, is the historic understanding our past. What did we do in the past, our decisions from the past that have influenced where we're at today? And in trying to think of our future in a different lens, Dunn County is a really unique opportunity. I wrote a grant, it's a national grant through Race Forward and GARE, and it's about equity and understanding what are our decisions in land use that have caused inequity, where people can live, low income housing. We don't really have a race, demographic here. We're 90% white, so it's really not a race issue as much as where's our wealth and where do we create housing for our workers, the people that are going to come and help support those jobs that we're in all aspects of the workforce. And through this process already of, this national cohort that Dunn County got selected to be a part of, and it's I think it's pretty cool. We got selected, we're with Washington DC, Denver, Colorado, Montgomery County, Maryland, Eugene, Oregon, 7 other large communities, and then there's Dunn County. And it's like, why did we get selected as Dunn County to be a part of this national grant? And one of the leaders of this group said, Dunn County is exactly what we want. We want, awareness. What is it that are we doing or not doing to attract people to our community? Or why are we here? And then there's the recreation community, connections. We don't really see this too often, right? Because we don't have a major trail system connecting neighborhoods. This is much more of an urban setting. This doesn't really fit what we see here, but it's not, we like, again, our rural lifestyle, and I don't think that plan is trying to say that we're pushing for this, but there's also an attraction for this. There's an attraction to be close to entertainment, to interact with people. And we are naturally isolated in rural Dunn County. We have to actually go out of our way, drive 20 minutes to interact with folks.
Well, if you kind of squint a little bit, it looks like Wilson Park with the other
Sure.
bands in the back and the Cedar Corp over there. I can kind of see that.
It can, and right, that's yes, the band shelter.
Band shelter, yeah.
Yes, and that community connection, and that's when people are connected, communities thrive. So a group like this and belonging, those are that next layer in the thriving as communities. So public engagement, overall for the comprehensive plan, we had the survey, like I said, pretty poor results. So we got 45,000 residents in Dunn County, we had 541 response. It's pretty sad, and I really hope that 541 isn't influencing the future of this plan. We did do villages, reach out to our villages. We actually, because we have 7 villages in Dunn County and we only had 2 respond. So we actually had a focus group just with the villages. And, Ridgeland, Wheeler, what great communities, for them to be at the table Downing and saying, hey, we want to grow, we need resources, we need help. And so I really appreciated the interaction with our villages and the call for help, the call for resources to grow. We did a targeted farmland owner survey, and that was a much better response. I think we had over 30% response rate for that. But again, it's the voice that we're calling for. And I feel like we maybe are missing other voices as we go through this project. And again, this is just my whole guilt trip slide. But ultimately, like what is it that we like about Dunn County, and how do we make sure we do our jobs to protect that for the next generation? I look at planning as it's our moment right now in time. And what does that look like for the next generation, the next future? And it comes back to that land use and those decisions that we're allowing for uses today, where we're allowing people to grow, live, and attracting to here. Overall, for the comp plan, where we're at, we're getting close. We're getting close to get out to the towns, and which is the scary process of saying, this is what belongs here, and this is what belongs here, versus, are we open to a mixed use? Are we absolute that it only is single family here, or is it maybe a daycare center next to a neighborhood? Maybe it's a dentist next to a neighborhood. So it's starting to try to really think outside the box and see what we're gonna tolerate, but then also have a decision tool, or try to really have our policies in this plan become decision tools for saying yes or no. And I guess as far as timeline goes, we're gonna get out to the towns. I would envision this county, the draft plan being ready by, I'm really hoping by May, out to the community. We're gonna have a county board, elections coming up here, so our county board will likely change. So it's a tough time, right? So if we have, a switch in county board members, will that change, getting them up to speed, the new members, before we can make a plan? So I would say overall, from, for involvement, if anyone's interested, we have an opportunity to sign up for email list if you want to be updated as far as proposals come forward. But hopefully by September, we have an adopted comp plan, and that will then give us the tools to change our zoning, update our zoning ordinance that's from the 80s, that really could use some help, and then really open us up for grants, emergency services grants, opportunities through infrastructure are really kind of stagnant until we actually get this plan updated. And so you probably can't see this. This is pretty cool. If historic markers throughout Wisconsin, right? We see these historic markers that are actually trying to talk about landscape. This one's about zoning. So
your favorite one, I bet.
Yeah. Oneida County. So the Oneida County zoning ordinance adopted May 16th, 1933 was the first comprehensive rural zoning ordinance in the United States. In the early 1930s, most northern Wisconsin counties were in financial difficulties. The Oneida County Board of Supervisors resolved the cost of transporting school children and the construction and maintenance of new roads by adopting a zoning ordinance prohibiting settlement in rural or in remote areas. The purpose was to promote public health, safety, and welfare, and to regulate, restrict, and determine the areas within the county where various activities could be conducted. Isn't that crazy? And you think about it, when I first started doing planning, there was this thing called the cost of community services. What does it cost to put in that rural subdivision? What does it cost now for that school district to get a bus to that rural area for picking up 1 kid, 2 kids, 4 kids, onto maintaining that new road infrastructure for 1 home, 2 homes? I remember when we had the housing crash. So we had several subdivisions with roads, but no market yet. And so 2008, 2009, that market crashed. And now we had farmers plowing up those fields. And it was, road infrastructure going through cornfields for a period of time. And then obviously that didn't last too long because it picked back up. But that cost to someone, and there was one home in that subdivision. So who maintained the roads? The roads were turned over to the township for one home, and now we're sending a school bus out there. So, I could probably go on and on, but I don't know if there's any questions. I kind of
Open it up for questions.
hopped around on this conversation.
You said we got a federal grant in Dunn County, how much was it and
So it's
how
a,
we get selected?
it was a national grant, and actually wait, there's no money. What it is, we're getting to, it's called a cohort, so we have professional, technical assistance and awareness to a platform for us to meet once a month as a group. And we're in resources with, Washington DC, Denver, Colorado, other communities, and the guidance of this, of these two nonprofit organizations. So it's really the cost of us getting free technical assistance for the next 9 months.
I'm gonna come back to the plan in a second, but I think one reason there's a lower response rate than you think is because we've had zoning for a long time, it's been competently administered, so we don't have people that are living in a nice single-family home are gonna worry about a gas station being set up next door. Where in some cities, you do see that. I mean, Houston's famous for the hodgepodge mess they've got down there, right? So I think we kind of take it for granted, and it works. But on that plan, I've read the county plan, and I've read the Menominee plan, and it's virtually unintelligible. By the time it gets through one list of policies, I don't remember where it started. Is there anything being done to make that readable for citizens and not just experts?
I agree, and I think Scott teed this up pretty good. Our Planning and Resource Development Committee at the county has asked the same question and said, hey, we can't have another plan that's 200 pages long and unreadable. So I've been tasked, I proposed it much more like in the platform of New Year's resolutions and rewriting our land use goals, objectives, policies to be more tangible and relatable to how we're gonna have a New Year resolution to lose weight. And so rewriting that framework, so I just presented this to the committee 2 weeks ago, and we're working on that process, right? So taking it from, heck, I think our transportation one included 3 major goals within 14, tasks below that, and trying to start grouping them into actual tangible activities that we can accomplish. But then also overreaching vision, right? Dunn County is going to be encompassing of this infrastructure, this growth, while supporting agricultural and rural lifestyle. So if we have an overreaching statement, then that helps guide what we're gonna go forward or hopefully implement as far as, or I shouldn't say implement, adopt for policies. Good question.
Tammy, I lived in Sherman Township for seven or 8 years, I guess. And when I would go to the meetings, the township, board meetings there's a complete division. There's the faction that wants to keep this an ag township or community. And there's the other side that wants to understand how we bring in some roads and improve this with some businesses that are light industrial and stuff. And that township, those two sides never did, in all the meetings I attended out there, never did come to any kind of agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just sitting there simmering. I don't know what the answer is, but I know there's the folks that wanna keep it the way it is and farming. And then there's those that say, well, we can't do that, but we gotta raise some money somehow, get the tax base up. So I don't know what the answer is, but it's out there.
It is.
Good luck.
Yes. And it is, every township, at the county level, we're trying to, right, respect what that vision of that township is and make sure we've incorporated and reflected that in our plan. And it is challenging, we have kind of a map in the office. Okay, this township, they only want 5-acre lots. This township, they want 40-acre lots. This township, they don't want anything. And it is a challenge. And another initiative I didn't share, is this, a project called Development Friendly Municipalities. And it's through our economic development department, myself, and our county clerk. And if communities invite us out to that, we are actually trying to do a process mapping of these what ifs. What would you be tolerant of? What do you want? And then what does your process look like? Right, there are certain townships that really don't want development, and they have they've adopted their own overlay kind of interesting ordinances to help deter it, and it's a thing. It's definitely a thing, which is okay too, right? I live in the rural area and I live on a very remote road and I love it, right? I love being able to walk down the road and have my dog run free and not cross another vehicle. I appreciate that. But also knowing that that's not sustainable either too or it belongs in a certain area. Right, not in my backyard.
Not over there either.
Yes. Yeah.
So early on, when you talked about zoned and unzoned townships. What's an unzoned township here in Dunn County?
Great question. Unzoned township really means that anything can happen. They have no land use ordinance, no zoning adopted, so a commercial business, a large livestock operation can pop up. Some can have start a non-metallic mine in that area. It's a free-for-all, for lack of a better term, in our unzoned towns.
So what would be an example of that? Which would be one of our townships that's unzoned? Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend, yes. I should have just had this one up before.
Well, I understand what you guys are getting at there, we work in zoned townships almost entirely, and it's very difficult to build in a place that's unzoned, not because of the rules there are, but the rules there aren't.
Right.
So getting decision and consensus, especially from a community leader, if there's no rules to start with, just means everybody does whatever they want, and you can never do anything.
Mm-hmm.
What's green and what's white there?
So green is everything that's under zoning. And so Menominee, so Elk Mound, so we have the village of Elk Mound here. All around Elk Mound is unzoned. Springbrook, Rock Creek. So if you think of our two very large solar farms that are coming, they're gonna be in Springbrook and Rock Creek.
Okay.
We got O'Galley, New Haven, Sand Creek, so our 4 quarters of the county are unzoned.
Okay, so.
Unzoned.
No zoning.
So you're saying it's harder to do something in an unzoned area? Because if it's unzoned, you should just be able to go do what you want.
Yeah, except for
By law.
somebody somewhere has to give you a permit. So what are they actually gonna write the permit
So-
to? And that's the curious thing, whenever you got fringy stuff, or the controversial stuff, like say a solar field, or a data center, or a sand plant, all 3 came up in the last couple seconds. They go to those places because they're not told they can't. But when you're just doing normal development stuff that I do, most stuff is actually acceptable. I don't build porn stores and that kind of stuff. So, it's actually much harder, is all I'm saying, because trying to even figure out what's the policy cost. Or getting someone to invest money like that when they're not sure the rug will be pulled out is hard.
Which brings up another question that I have, is when there are no seats of government or rules that in those counties, or towns, and there's a disagreement, is there a higher level of government that comes in and says, helps, or decides, or judges, or how does that work when there's a conflict?
I would say I'd be hiring an attorney and probably challenging the local authority at that point. To actually have, vetting whether that's an actual valid ordinance that they're trying to administer under, and under what authority.
Like the Elk Creek, the solar,
Sure.
that's big, and there's no zoning there, so if some residents like it, and some residents don't, how's that playing out?
And you're jumping in, like, so yeah, I threw solar out there, which I should be careful on, because there's certain land uses at a certain scale that no matter, even if in a zone township, we can't really regulate, right? There are certain ones that the state of Wisconsin has said, you can't. You gotta have public hearings, some basic, framework at the local level, but if they can meet X, Y, Z to satisfy the state, then the local voice doesn't occur. So, but it's even harder in those smaller townships, or in those unzoned townships in that case, because the notification, I would say probably the bigger difference in a zone versus unzoned is notification. How do I know what's going on? If it's in one of our zone townships, we're required by statute, by ordinance, to notify neighbors.
Oh, okay.
In an unzoned, that's not a requirement.
So, so these townships are not under the Dunn County zoning, but can they establish their own zoning rules within those townships? So,
They would have to, adopt their ordinance and or adopt a zoning ordinance, and then actually have it, because of the powers to be, they would actually have to have it approved at the county, and then have a way to administer it themselves.
so in reference to Mark's question, is that the difficulty? It's like you might be in an unzoned township, you just don't know what their zoning is because you don't know who to go to.
Well, that's kind of it, I can tell you just nothing happens. Very little happens in most townships then, which maybe is the goal of the township by being unzoned. But for me, like when I look at those white counties, I'm a commercial and industrial developer. I've never been to those places to speak of, Elk Mound a little, but never worked there. And so not having good zoning stops everything. That's the gist of what I'm saying.
So have all of the townships that have zoning gone through those steps then?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And there's some governing authority that those unzoned towns have, are driveways. So that's kinda, I always think it's almost a very unique, deal breaker in a sense, cause the town can approve where a driveway connects to their town roads. And if they don't approve your driveway, that use can't happen. So that's what's the scary part, is if that's not tied to, kind of going back to, trying to come up with a project, how do you make an investment when they could just literally kill a deal if they don't wanna issue a driveway permit? So that's, kind of the easiest and most interesting, land use regulations that townships have anywhere.
Assuming we want economic development, at least in the urban areas here, affordable housing is probably the single biggest impediment according to Adam Ackel, the economic development guy. And I wish the city Menominee was here, because I think they have a lot to answer for, because they seem to refuse to build up. The least expensive way to build is up. And I don't see any large 6, 8, 10-story, buildings in the city. So I think, I wish the city was here to ask that question. Maybe that should be your next speaker.
Oh.
The city plan. But, and that Burger King that went up, in a lot of places, that would have been a mixed-use development. There's Burger King on the bottom and maybe 4 stories of apartments above. So that's the city. But in the towns, I think most towns, if you don't have 5 acre, they have a minimum 1 acre. And affordable housing in one family home on a single acre is not generally affordable.
Right.
So can the county do much for affordable housing compared to the city? Can the county do much for affordable housing by smaller lot sizes, those types of things?
Yes.
Seems
But
tentative.
we need that voice, right? Dunn County, we try to do an accessory dwelling unit ordinance. We do have an accessory dwelling unit, but very restricted.
What's that?
So an accessory dwelling unit is just, a smaller subordinate, mother-in-law apartment, kind of that, example of, whether it's connected to the house or separate, but we have a lot of resistance. And there's other factors. I mean, the lending institution and insurance are the two kind of regulatory branches that I feel like they're almost more regulatory than local zoning. Cause if you have a loan against your house, different things, it's harder just to add another dwelling and get financing for it on your property. So there's very rare circumstances that, we're not seeing too many interest in the areas that we are finding it interest are in the rural areas. And those areas don't want it. They don't want, what I always think is just the farmstead where, they did have mom and dad and another family member living on the farm, operating. We're having a lot of resistance for that in the county. So again, whether it's minimum lot size or in adjusting that or allowing for some of these uses to occur, that rural lifestyle, rural character seems to, be a stalemate for some communities.
Well, it's very interesting. Any more questions, but it is time to.
Well, that's kind of doom and gloom to end on.
Oh,